Good morning, everyone. Special welcome to those of you online. We'll just take a couple more minutes. We have some people strolling across the beautiful lawns of Kwinana, and we'll get the field walk underway. So thanks very much. Bear with us a couple of minutes and we'll be on. To go, if we proceed. Okay. All right, thanks very much everyone for being here. I'm going to stand and sort of look this way if that's okay, so if you don't disappear too far around the corner. Special welcome to those that have live streamed in, sitting in the comfort of home on YouTube. Thanks for joining us, and to you guys here, just be aware that we are assessing a live stream process, which we'll, if we can get to work well, we'll look to use that in our field trials and presentations that we do out in the field from here. So thanks for being the guinea pigs for us today. First of all, I guess I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we're standing on today, the Noongar people, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. So welcome to everyone. The idea behind this demonstration here is to try and give those within CSBP and WestCEF a bit of perspective about WA Ag, about what CSBP's role is within that, how we grow wheat, the importance of fertiliser, and then your involvement in that whole relationship as being a CSBP or WestCEF employee as well. So the WA Ag industry is an enormous industry which you're part of. The WA ag industry is second to mining in WA in that it's worth about $10 billion. It's a significant industry within our business, and not everyone always appreciates or understands that. So the significant part for CSBP, I guess, is that 60% of that $10 billion comes from the cropping in the WA area. So if you can imagine Geraldton through to Esperance, we're largely growing, well not we, but the farmers are growing wheat, canola, barley, lupins predominantly, amongst a few other things. We have an enormous challenge in WA Ag in that the soils we are farming by world standards are pretty terrible. They're very old, they're very weathered and degraded, which makes us very reliant on needing fertiliser to produce reasonable crops. So CSBP's role, I guess, in that is that we take great responsibility in providing that product to WA farmers, and hopefully we'll demonstrate today what that fertiliser does and what the importance of it is in order to enable them to do that. So we have a worldwide challenge, which I guess we're a little removed from in Australia because we do produce a whole lot of food, but the world demand for food is enormous and growing, and the population growth that goes with that is equally growing. We have limited agricultural land in the world, and certainly in WA, so we are worldwide trying to produce as much food as we can to meet those demands. So fairly fortunate here in WA, we do produce a hell of a lot. 95% of that grain that we grow is exported to go and feed world markets, and we have farmers there who are trying to maximise their yields and maximise their profits, and fertiliser provided by CSBP is certainly a significant part of that. So, or let me say, with fertilisers, the world is able to increase its production by about 30%, food production. So that is significant and enormous, and that's well supported in that it's a critical product in order to provide that food for the world. Without the stats, I dare say, with WA's soils, and hopefully we'll demonstrate today, the gains through fertilisers would be far greater than that. So we see some significant results in applying fertiliser and helping farmers be profitable and contributing to those world markets. So CSBP, the oldest fertiliser company in WA, certainly the biggest fertiliser company in WA, and one that holds a very responsible attitude in providing that product, as well as all the technical advice that goes with fertiliser. It's a very scientific, very technical product. It's not always cheap. At the moment it's relatively expensive, so farmers are very reliant on us and the information we provide, not only the products we provide, but also the knowledge and advice that comes with that to enable them to use their fertiliser wisely. So this trial site here, this is purely a demonstration. Normally in the field we would set up the full scientific protocol with replicated trial plots and do all the appropriate analysis and stats on them, but this is purely a one-strip demo to help show you what fertiliser does. We would like to have shown you some really beautiful trends here. I'm sure you can stand there and look at this plot and see that some of the challenges that are there. We probably have 3 or 4 different soil types, vastly different soil types, which really impacts the results we get from fertiliser. And on top of that, as the guys seeded this, they dragged up all sorts of wonderful things like railway sleepers and railway spikes and rocks and everything else. So that's certainly given us some variation in this trial, but nevertheless there's a story in everything, so we'll help talk to that as well. So you can see on these placards what we've tried to do or tried to show you. Please feel free to come over this way and we can have a bit of a closer look. We've started, I guess, by showing you, if you were a farmer trying to go grow wheat and a wheat crop and make some money and you didn't put any fertiliser on whatsoever, that's what you're going to get. These first few plots are showing the critical nature of nitrogen, so we're putting a base fertiliser, and we've put on a low nitrogen rate. So for you guys, you might best know it as urea or Flexien type products. We're putting on a low nitrogen rate, a medium nitrogen rate, and a high nitrogen rate. So we would love to have seen that perfect trend upwards. We can't quite see that thanks to that real gravel and dip and issues with establishment through there. But hopefully you can see a little bit of that coming through. So note in that plot, it looks a much healthier, nice looking healthy plant, whereas these ones are a little bit pale, potentially still nitrogen deficient. So hopefully that outlines no fertiliser, that's what you're going to get. And a farmer is constantly grappling with, well, how much nitrogen do I need to apply and what do I do to get my best gross margin as a result of having done that? A farmer will start with a soil testing program over summer, pre-planting the crop, so they have a very good analysis of what's available in the soil, and our team in account managers and agronomists will then go and sit with customers and help decipher those results to then determine a fertiliser plan for their program, which then comes to this sort of process that we're showing. So that's the nitrogen story. Well, hopefully you can envisage what the story could have been beautifully with some little challenges there. If we move along a little bit, we're then illustrating the criticality of all nutrients, okay? So the macronutrients we talk about are nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur. They're all critical and they're the main four. Then it goes into a string of micronutrients like copper, zinc, molybdenum, manganese, etc., which we haven't demonstrated here. But what we did here is we came along and we took out the potassium. Have I got that right? Okay. So everything's important depending on the soil types of course. So we took the potassium out of that site and we haven't necessarily seen a reduction in the quality of the crop. So this would suggest that these soils didn't necessarily need that potassium that we were putting on. Phosphorus, on the other hand, we took the phosphorus out and look what happened. You have that limiting nutrient, you just can't grow a crop. So when I talk about all of those macronutrients and the like that we need, and the micronutrients, we can't have one that is limiting. If there's one that is limiting, it's going to upset the potential of the whole crop. So hopefully we're showing that there, the importance of nitrogen, the importance of putting all things in that we need. And then you come to the other end again, there's just another buffer on the end which demonstrates nil fertiliser. That's what you're going to get. So hopefully that shows the critical importance of fertiliser to WA farmers and also worldwide. And hopefully it outlines the importance of what we do, not just as a commercial company, but one that takes real responsibility seriously in terms of the fertiliser provided and how efficiently we use it. So I hope that explains that. Any questions from anyone? Let's ask about growing wheat itself, WA Ag, what fertiliser does. Any questions on anything that you've seen to date? Of the plant? Well, what we should in the soil, I'm not quite sure, I don't have that in front of me, sorry. But we can see, without having that, we can see that it was a nitrogen responsive site. And dare I say it, there probably wouldn't be a soil in WA that wouldn't be nitrogen responsive to some sort. Not necessarily P and K, nitrogen is the critical one. So that would be rare to see a soil that didn't get some sort of result or response from a nitrogen application. The Z31. The Z31 is the growth stage of the crop. So it's measured in a Zadox scale. So Z31 is a technical term for what stage that was at. That was when that Flexien was applied to that. And that would be a fairly standard practice for wheat growers in WA, that they would put a base fertiliser down and then it would be all about that nitrogen application. They may do a lot of nitrogen up front and then they'd come back with one, maybe even two nitrogen applications again later as the crop is progressing and drawing things out. But again, if anything else is limiting and you're putting nitrogen on, you're wasting your time. Urea contains carbon dioxide and some people have thought if you put it in the ground, yep, you might be able to catch carbon dioxide. Are you doing any trials around the application of urea versus ammonium nitrate on the front? Yeah, so the question is around carbon emissions, I guess, and urea versus flexi. And look, I think it largely goes for all fertilisers. This is becoming a really emerging topic for CSBP and Wesfarmers as a whole in being accountable and responsible for this sort of thing. So we need to be good at, and we're going through this process about measuring fertilisers and the carbon emissions that come from that. We need to lead that charge and be very aware of measuring that and getting the results that we need. That will then extend to farmers at some point, where there's a lot of discussion about that without any real guts or measures just yet. Probably the biggest part of that is how fertiliser is manufactured, in that it's a heavy carbon emitter, and that's probably where the gains need to be made. But look, it's all of those things, but certainly there's some responsibility in terms of how we use fertiliser, how much we use, bearing in mind the carbon.
The technical question is around what happens to the carbon dioxide that comes
Yep.
off urea when it's in the ground.
Yep.
Which is unresolved, but I thought you might have been doing some work around that.
We're trying to get a measure, without having a really good answer to your question, I think we're trying to get a good handle on all of that and the measuring of that use. The bigger thing, I think, is the overall volume of use. So if we are working very closely with farmers on what we call nutrient use efficiency, so let's put the minimum amount of fertiliser you need to put on to get maximum yield. So that means timing of application, it means good placement of your fertiliser. Instead of just broadcasting and let's drill it right where that plant is so it gets full benefit, that's where probably the bigger gains are going to be made in that regard. Sure, I tried to do that on the second question, so forgive me for the first one. Yeah.
My second question is, I've read somewhere that over time we've managed to put quite a lot of phosphate into the ground.
Yep.
And so WA's soil has changed due to phosphate.
Uh-huh.
But I've also read that with ammonium nitrate, it's an acidifier, and that's not helping because the pH is dropping.
Yeah.
So what happens around there?
So the question is around different fertilisers and some of those fertilisers being acidic in nature and how they might impact soil acidity. So the answer is yes, some are more acidic than others, but by far the greater issue is just the nature of producing crops in WA is just an acidification process, more so than just the application of a fertiliser that would make that soil acidic. So farmers will combat that especially with sandy type soils, which are generally more acidic, and we have plenty of those in WA. Farmers will combat that by use of lime as a standard process in their program every year or two, every 3 or 4 years, but they're measuring pH all the time and trying to get that soil pH window right. If you go either way, same as we're talking about limiting nutrients, then it has a severe impact on the crops that you can produce. So the fertiliser doesn't contribute to acidity, it's more so just about the general farming practice, which...
Because they're not swapping the crops around?
Yes, I guess farmers will also try and manage rotations as best they can to maintain soil health. So you wouldn't just grow wheat. You need disease breaks, you need legumes to put nitrogen back into the soil, you need crops to be putting organic matter back into the soil. So while we might talk about fertiliser in any one year, that's very important in a whole farming rotation system as to how that farmer will manage their soils over the course of that rotation, but also into the future. So it's their number one asset, right? So if they're not looking after it and making sure it's healthy and good, they're pretty quickly out of the game. Yes?
Is there a cost difference for us to produce nitrogen or potassium or phosphorus for CSBP?
The question was, is there a cost difference to CSBP to produce phosphorus, nitrogen, potassium? I don't think I can give you a great answer on that, other than to say we are largely driven by import of fertiliser. Yes, we manufacture some here, but it's largely based around the import cost, and whatever that market determines at any one time, which is a really foggy game at the moment, if you like, and something they're grappling with, that is largely what determines that potassium-based fertiliser price or nitrogen-based fertiliser and so on. So I think that's more determined by world markets, which are pretty challenging at the moment, and which is why we're seeing generally high prices across almost everything at the moment. Yes, Tara.
Considering we're dependent on world markets, is there any sort of government legislation? Obviously, we're growing food and we need food to eat.
Yep.
It can't get too high or the farmers can't buy it. Is there anything protecting farmers in that way and allowing us to continue without there being?
The question is around the challenge to get the food volume and production right for the world and what governments are doing and how they're being involved in that. I wouldn't say that there's anything that prominent in Australia that I'm aware of. As for other parts of the world, I'm not really sure they do. They seem to be a little more vested in agriculture, in how they manage that and do that, but it doesn't seem that we have anything significant in Australia at this stage. Not a great answer, and I'm not quite sure why. The reason of that is maybe someone in the business can know more about that.
I wasn't aware that so much potassium was put into the ground.
Yeah.
I didn't think CSBP sold potassium-based fertilisers, or not through here.
Yeah, the question is about the volume of potassium we sell, I guess, and wasn't the realisation of the volume that it is. Potassium is, I think we have traditionally had a reasonable handle on phosphorus and nitrogen requirements. Potassium has been something that has been a relatively new discovery, and when I say that, it's probably in the last 20 years or so, but considering we've been farming for 100 plus, it's been discovered that removal of grain, removal of hay is a great contributor to removal of potassium from the soil, and that's been a trend that's happened in time. So in that period, we've really discovered that the potassium levels have been really depleted, and that's something that we are, I'll say madly, trying to recover now. So potassium is a booming market.
So does CSBP have any of the salt lakes that potash is coming out of, or are you buying it from elsewhere?
I don't think we have any of our own. I think I can safely say that, but we have started taking loads of from Kalium Lakes, I think it is, that we've begun that process. Yeah. Good questions. Any others, or anyone from online, the live stream, who has any questions also? Not yet. Okay.
I've got a question for you.
Yes, Bridget.
What function does in-season plant sampling help?
So when I talked, the question was around what function does in-season plant sampling have, and I mentioned before about soil testing. So largely all farmers will soil test in summer. That gives them a gauge of where they're at and what they might need to apply. Our amazing lab does all that soil testing, and then they also offer a service of plant testing during the season. So you can send plant samples into the lab and get a reading of exactly what that plant is experiencing. Regardless of what we're showing in the soil, which isn't always available, that plant will tell the exact story. Well, this is what I'm getting, and this is what I'm not getting. So that allows farmers to get that information, and then if it's not too late, to resurrect or remedy those issues. So it might be applying more nitrogen, or it might be throwing more potassium on, or applying a foliar manganese spray, for example. They have those avenues available to them as long as they don't leave it too late. So that's another great tool. Beyond that, maybe worth mentioning the Detect device that CSBP has been very innovative in developing and releasing, in that the Detect guys have a spectrometer where you can grab a leaf of wheat or barley, you put it in this machine, and it will give you the nitrogen live reading of that plant. So that feeds back to the software involved with New Logic, which is all our soil testing and plant testing analysis, and that will then give the farmer a recommendation according to what's going on. So that's a great innovation that CSBP has, which has been out in the field this season and created some real interest.
What happens next in the journey of land? When did it turn golden, and are you going to harvest it?
Yeah, so for this now, yes, the question was what happens next here, and will we harvest it? Yes, we'll certainly do that. Wheat varieties are bred for WA conditions and a length of season. So this wheat will know that it's got finite time to finish and grow and put a seed up in its head. It's a survival mechanism, if you like, and they would grow different varieties of wheat in other different parts of the world. So this will try and finish. Depending on the moisture, If it has a lot of moisture, it will finish a little slower. If it gets really tight, or you'll see like a plot that is struggling, the plant thinks, oh, I've got to get going here, and it'll push it up and try and finish in a hurry. So it has a set length of season, which have a little bit of variation with the way the season actually finishes. So you'll start to see this, what we call hay off. It'll turn a golden brown yellow progressively, and it will be ready for harvest, let's say end of November or thereabouts. And we will harvest these plots. Again, with the variation, I'm not sure what that's going to show for us. It'll be interesting, but we can certainly have a look and see what the results were. But if you're interested in that sort of thing, we do have a research website, and we do a number of trials out in the field where we harvest and statistically analyse all of that information to give real good gutsy info for good decision making, which will probably hold a fair bit more weight than this demo will. Anyone else? Good questions? All right. Well, look, Bridget is part of the agronomy and research team, so Bridget and I will stay here for a moment should you have any other queries that you'd like to ask. Steph from marketing has requested that if anyone is interested, they'd love to do a little chat with you on video afterwards to see what you thought of today and what you got from it and why it's of interest to you. So feel free to grab Steph, don't all jump on her at once. But look, other than that, I guess thanks very much for coming. It's great to be able to bring this to you and give that demonstration a little bit of info about the perspective on ag and CSBP's role, and I guess also to everyone in CSBP, whether it's customer service or agronomy or operations or someone driving a truck, it's an enormous contribution that we all make to what is a really important industry practice and program, so you can all sleep well at night that you're doing your bit in helping to feed the world. So well done to you all. Okay, thanks for joining us online. Over and out.